Hi, Dave here, and today we're going to check out the work of Hassan Tabrizi. He's an illustrator slash concept artist based in Lyon, France. He's actually kind of similar to Faraz Shanyar in terms of style, although I feel like Hassan is a bit darker. And he has a bit of that Mikhail Burlko vibes. Like he's the first artist I kind of reviewed in this kind of art review series. And they have the same kind of dark war-esque kind of vibe, right? And it's mostly Hassan is mostly focused on characters, not a lot of environments. I mean, obviously sometimes we'll add an environment with the characters, but as you can see based on his portfolio, he's more into the character art. And I feel like Hassan is influenced by Faraz, but that's just my guess. Because they do have very, very similar styles, right? Anyway. And if you look at his work, Hassan's work, he's not very textured as well. He doesn't have a lot of brush variety, not a lot of texture brushes, not a lot of grit in his work. It's very, very kind of straightforward, right? And he's just, all I see is basic brushes being used. And I think he's just focusing more on the rendering side of it. And in a way, he does have a gouache kind of approach where, like you can see the shapes of it. Like it's not that, there's a bit of rendering, right? But it's not that basic. Fuck. I have a point here. For example, in this example, like you can see the simplicity in his approach. It only gets complex as you go deeper, say, into the face, right? It gets more rendered in a way, just because there's more shapes involved, but it's not smooth in any way. Like if you zoom in, you can actually still see the individual brushstrokes, right? Like it's not blended, right? It looks blended from afar, but if you kind of zoom in, you can see the individual shapes being manifested, separated by hues or by values, right? And you can see he gets even simpler as you go further out from the character, right? It's more detailed in the face, obviously, just because it's the first thing we have to, or we're kind of naturally drawn to, so it makes sense, right? And again, there is a bit of exaggeration in the forms, right? In the characters, but you know, it's still pretty realistic just because of the way it's rendered, right? Or not rendered. Fuck. I think it's because of the lighting, right? Or the wide range of values being used. It's not that graphical. Now this one's pretty graphical, right? It's more of a sketch, but most of his pieces are a bit rendered, right? Or shit, not rendered. Well, maybe is that the word I'm looking for? There's a bit more definition, right? Usually. Fuck. Right? Again, very, very dark concept. So this one is called War Reporter. Somewhere, I'm guessing in the Middle East. Palestine. Maybe. Most likely. Right? Again, there's hardly any texture brushes being used. They're all pretty basic, right? But there's such a wide range of it that it compensates for the lack of texture. It becomes the texture, right? And look at the folds. Reminds me of Burlko's work. Very, very similar, right? And yeah. Now here you can actually see the definition of the face a bit, right? The structure of the face. And the anatomy is pretty good. Kind of like Faraz, right? This guy is obviously riding some kind of dragon. And look at how evenly spaced out the colors and the shapes are when this figure and dragon is being painted, right? Like it's fairly clean in a way. Like the silhouette, the shapes, even if it's not that finished in some parts. Just because it's contained well, it feels right, right? Like even the composition, full picture, it looks kind of solid. Now this one definitely does remind me of Faraz Shanyar, because I've seen one painting of Mr. Shanyar where it's heavily on the blue side as well, and I feel like, or if I recall, the guy is kind of standing in the pool or pond, right? But again, Hassan does like to go for standing positions typically. Like they always tend to lean left or face left, like his figures, right? I'm not sure what this means, but yeah. I mean, there is a bit of exaggeration in the anatomy, just a bit, but because of the wide range of values in the anatomy, like it feels flesh-like, right? So there is a bit of realism in that regard. Nice highlight here, great contrast. Here we have a demon king, perhaps, right? Very, very intense. I know here it's actually kind of hard to see the individual brushstrokes. It's a bit, maybe it's because we're too zoomed out, right? Here you can still see it, right? And it's fun to see the kind of back and forth brushstrokes. This one feels more like an oil painting, right? It's a bit too refined for my tastes. Another mech-ish person. It gets simpler as you go further down, and obviously the face is way more defined, right? Has some hue variety in it, reds, blues, some greens, right? And obviously the body and the mechanical parts are kind of in the green side. Again, very, very dark themes. I'm not sure why. What the influence is. Lots of skulls. So this is a babe eagle, along with the skeleton guy with the dead camel. I mean, quite dark. No, the background is kept simple. But look at how graphical it is, right? The silhouettes are clear. I'll say rendering. Fuck. The rendering within those shapes are kind of simple. It's not even that finished, right? But it shows you enough of it that it kind of makes sense, right? Here we have witches. Yeah. Not very pleasing. Here we have another concept. Again, very, very dark themes. And lots of... what's the word? His work is very eerie, right? It's not very comfortable to look at. Just because the themes are kind of dark. Has a lot of death in it. Although this skull of this horse, maybe, is pretty well refined, right? Like you can feel the structure of the skull. It looks pretty good. The face is pretty much rendered or refined to a high level, and then everything else is kind of like the brush does get bigger as you go further away from the main points of focus. The face and the skull, right? The background kept simple. Reminds me of the work of Miguel Iglesias. He does the same thing for his characters, where the face, he starts painting the face and it's pretty refined in the beginning, and then he paints the body, and the body isn't as, it's not in the same level of refinement as the head or face. I've looked at the variety again of hues here being used, right? I mean, they're all under one family, like red, pink, red, purple, fuck. warm, right? But you could see this is so apparent and common in gouache paintings. A lot of gouache painters know how to separate values and hues the right way and add that variety, because they're kind of limited by shape, right? They're not always going to be as blended as oil painters, you know? Like oil painters tend to be a bit more they like to blend things. That's the point. Gouache painters are kind of more simple and more straight to the point, right? And I feel like it's way faster. It's like it's the opaque version of watercolor, basically. Yeah. Anyway, so here we have some guy fighting a sea monster. Again, the face is pretty much refined. Even at this view, it's pretty solid, right? Like the structure, the mass of the face is well refined, right? The hands, everything else is really just more of a sketch. But because the face is kind of solid or refined enough, it kind of compensates for the lack of detail everywhere else, right? Here we have Frankenstein in Baghdad, I believe. That's the concept anyway of his. Again, not a lot of texture. All of this detail is just him painting with a smaller brush. A rake brush here and there, but right? If you go further away, full picture, it feels super intense. But as you zoom in, you can still see the impressionism, right, of his approach. Very, very chaotic. Obviously, it helps to paint, zoomed out. So you can always see the bigger picture, right? And whenever you zoom in, you will always find that your brushstrokes aren't as good, and that's okay because it's not meant to be seen close up anyway. I mean, there are illustrations where you have to be more refined, but concept-wise, right, you don't really need to go that much into detail. Here we have a guy with a broom-ish, right? Very, very interesting color choices here. A bit of texture in the bottom, but that's pretty much it. I think he likes to use kind of like a flat ellipse brush. I see the same kind of brush being used. I think that's his common main brush, perhaps. Another old guy holding something. Again, eerie concept. Again, facing left. And he really likes to show off the arms, the shoulder, the arms, forearms, right? And even the way the ribs are done, like the bones. Look at the shapes here, the triangles and shit. Right? And he often likes to leave a bit of line work, kind of like, again, Faraz Sonyar and even Evan Lee. Now, Evan Lee does it in the end for, it's more of a style thing, but, it's nice seeing a bit of line work sometimes. It kind of has a nice look when it's combined with some paint, right? Now, if you're trying to go for a full rendering, adding line work will not, it kind of destroys the look. But if you're not going for a full rendered approach, I think, let's say a gouache-like approach, where you can see more of the shapes, I think adding a bit of line work is okay, right? And it's not even really line work. You're just kind of boldening the edges, right? Think of Art Nouveau art, right? Where you kind of bolden the silhouette of the whole thing. Again, facing left, creature design here, or concept. A bit of texture in the chaotic environment. But yeah. Right? Facing left again. Again, He likes to have the same pose, and I think if you have a fixed pose, it helps you focus more on the design. He's kind of like Anthony Jones as well. Like Anthony Jones sticks to like the same, well, not the same, but similar shots, you know, and it helps him focus more on the design. He's not much of a storyteller, right? He's more of a designer. Now here we have a walking concept. Again, flat brush. It's kind of like an ellipse flat brush, right? It's his main painting brush. Awesome. The face, way more refined than everything else. But yeah. Here we have another warrior. Lots of warriors in his work. It's usually men and monsters and soldiers, right? Warriors. That's his kind of go-to concept subject matter. The grass is pretty kept simple. Did I say pretty or kitty? Fuck. Again, nice indication of shapes. Very, very clear. It's not that tight, but you know, it works, right? The face, again, very, very structured. Like you can see the cheekbones and shit. Like it looks solid, right? Nice hand, nice sword. Background, sky, kept very, very simple. Almost graphical, right? Oh, reminds me of Liang Mark. Liang Mark has the same kind of approach, right? Very, very gouache-like. Very, very heavy on the shapes. Exaggerated, not exaggerated, but strong silhouette. And then within that, lots of shapes. Liang Mark, Faraj, Shanyar. Mikhail Barulko a bit. And there's also this other guy. He does a lot of like fashion stuff. And well, not fashion, but he does exaggerate the figures a bit. I can't remember his name, but I remember him painting like these African fighting dudes. Maybe you're familiar with his work, but yeah, they have the same gouache-like kind of style. And yeah, right? Strong silhouettes, lots of shapes inside the silhouette. The face is way more defined than everything else. And this one does remind me of Barulko because the flamethrower thingy, very, very dark. Right? Lots of, well, not lots of, but there is variety in values. Hues, just a bit, you know, there's a bit of orange and green, or blue, green, or teal. I think it's called teal. And some rusted colors there, here and there. But the value range is still pretty wide, right? It has a bit of realism. Even if it's a bit too smooth, because again, he doesn't have a lot of texture in his work, it still has a bit of, you know, realism, right? And he has a couple of these, like kind of like comic types of artwork where it's a bit on the narrative side, right? Well, maybe not comic, but graphic novel-esque, right? Because I feel like if you want to do comics, you have to have ink. Like it's kind of the staple medium to have inks in your comic, but you know, whatever. Again, the faces are very, very full of life, right? Same thing here. Brah. Here we have another Frankenstein concept in Baghdad, right? Boom, he's awoken. And then this is apparently Frankenstein, and then his monster. Anyway, I think we have a close-up here. Wow, again, look at the impressionism, right? It's so chaotic, but if you zoom out, it looks pretty tight, right? And it happens. So I do suggest painting in this frame where you see the whole canvas, and then you just kind of leave it at that. If it looks good at this level, it's pretty much okay, or it's enough, right? Usually. Because whenever you zoom in, kind of in this level, you'll always see the chaos in it. And it's okay, no worries, right? Now the face is still way refined even at this level, so maybe he does zoom in the face. So when you zoom out, it gets even more like intense, right? And again, look at the level of detail, the face, the body, and then everything else. Even the legs are pretty much at the same level as, well, maybe not. The environment is super simple, but there is this gradation of intensity, right? It's most intense in the face, head, then the torso, then the legs, and then everything else, right? So this is the last piece we're going to review of Hassan Tabrizi's portfolio. Again, simple brushes being used, not very complex, but he spends more time in the refining of the shapes, making sure he has enough values in it, right? To kind of make it a bit realistic in a way. A bit of hue variety, not too much. He's not very, he's not like, what's his name? Oh god. Like using Zhang, where you can see like a lot of colors in his work. Basically, Hassan doesn't have the whole color wheel in his paintings. He likes to keep it simple, kind of dark, and not a lot of saturation in his work. Maybe for his graphic novel thingies or comic thingies, it's a bit bright, but everything else is kind of just dark and heavy. Why is everything so heavy? So that's it for this art review of Hassan Tabrizi. Thank you for watching. Keep training, keep painting, keep learning, and stay free.